Joining us next is Sudhindra Balaji, Senior Vice President and Tribe IT Lead at Danske Bank, one of the leading banking players in the Denmark market. He'll be talking to us about modernizing mission critical applications without stopping the bank. Hey Sudhindra, welcome to Apidays
Hey,
Dubai.
Prashant, thank you for having me. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah, yes, your screen is up. So
Awesome.
screen is all, stage is all yours. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Happy to be a part of this event. A quick introduction to who I am, also to set the context here. I am the global head responsible for Danske Bank's core banking platform. Danske Bank is a large Scandinavian bank. We operate primarily in the Nordics and a few countries around that. And I, of course, am a technologist at heart. I have been with banking for about 20 plus years. I'm immensely passionate about generating business value through technology. And for vast part of the last 3 to 4 years, I have been working heavily with how do we use APIs to modernize core banking platform and thereby also deliver business value through it. So here are a few experiences that I would like to share. Our starting point was to look at what are the triggers for us to consider modernization of our core banking platform. And I'm sure many of you will recognize these to be common pain points. One is we typically have an IT portfolio which has been built over decades, which means it is also subject to all the accumulated debts that come with evolutionary architecture, mergers of different systems at speed, etc. The next one is about increasing the cost of change due to such a portfolio state, which means progressively it would become more and more expensive for us to be able to maintain the portfolio and also take us longer to deliver towards business. This also in turn increased our overall operational risk profile of the portfolio, both on the portfolio complexity itself and also people and technology. We progressively have had a lot of challenges in making sure that we can still attract and retain talent who are willing to work on legacy technologies. And then in the end, as far as material impact to business is concerned, it significantly restricts our ability to react to customer expectations and business expectations. So this was a little bit our starting point. And then we thought, okay, then what can we do about it? As I said, the why was about the business drivers and the technology and the people and competence that I just talked about. And the what and the how was revolving a little bit around what kind of risks were acceptable and beyond which we could simply not stay in the same state. There were several modernization approaches to consider. Of course, it starts anywhere between on the left-hand side as to recoding parts of the platform up until on the right-hand side to picking commercially available core banking solution and reintegrating. And then the what and the how also contained an operating constraint for us to make sure that no matter which approach we took, we were able to progressively and continuously show business value and not end up in an approach where we started on a modernization journey in year zero and then something of value was only visible after 4 to 5 years. So, so based on this, we defined and agreed on a done state where we were very conscious to state that coexistence of legacy portfolio and modern portfolio was or will be a reality. And then we were also very conscious in making sure that while we were modernizing our core banking portfolio through APIs and cloud, we stopped accruing more technical debt. So as much as it was important for us to deliver the APIs, which were the new ways of integration, it was important for us to stop additional integrations on the old interfaces. And then, as I mentioned, getting to a done state incrementally was key for us, so as to not make the business and the customers wait for a long time before we could actually show some value. So our starting point in terms of our technical inventory looked a little bit like this. We had business applications primarily on mainframe. And the implementation choice and approach we took for this was that we primarily want to land up our portfolio on private or public cloud. When we started, it was private, and then now, of course, we are significantly investing in making sure that we are able to proceed on AWS. And then here, as I said, we prepared and designed for coexistence. Considering we are core banking and hold a lot of master data, our focus was to make sure that we maintain data integrity and also functional integrity due to the coexistence bit. The state of the portfolio also offered us a situation where it was a set of poorly managed separation of concerns, which basically meant that business rules, data handling rules, etc., was quite intermixed. So we used domain-driven design as a primary approach to slice and dice how we wanted to differentiate the monolithic core banking portfolio we have and take an outside in view and figure out how to incrementally deliver modernization through APIs. And then, of course, on the last part, we had mainframe developers and business analysts who knew a lot about the existing system, as it is with typical legacy portfolios, but the knowledge was not sufficiently documented. So we took an approach here to infuse business and technical competence by making sure that we hired cloud native application developers so we can infuse that commercial and standard experience into the teams. But we also very consciously invested in our own people who were SMEs in the portfolio and cross-skilled them so progressively they could work with both mainframe and cloud technologies so as to make sure that we bring people along and also not lose key knowledge. And then we also focus quite a bit on making sure that we have the discipline around product and portfolio management and not end up in a cloud application portfolio, which was also some kind of a strangely managed monolith. And then agile ways of delivery, in making sure that we incrementally deliver value was a key cornerstone of how we wanted to deliver. So we took a three-phased approach to get from the stage where we had the business application portfolio on mainframe and offered relevant APIs and streaming events based on that portfolio, and the portfolio and the data itself landed on cloud. I have a few high-level technical descriptions of how each of these phases looked, which I would like to share with you. Phase one was all about making sure that we introduced a distributed read. So typically in this and the next two slides, what you will see is on the left-hand side, we have the existing portfolio, which is on mainframe, both the database and the functional layer. And on the right-hand side, we have our design for cloud. And in between, we have, of course, domain model, which was derived as an output out of the domain-driven design exercise. So the first phase was about taking the data on mainframe, applying DDD as an approach to it, and looking at the subdomains and recreating a modern and a more flexible data model on the right-hand side, and thereby also use the data streams out of the mainframe to continuously populate the new data model on cloud. And all the RESTful APIs and the events that we issued on cloud would just talk to the data that was out of the new data model. So first phase was all about getting to a new data model and then allowing for read operations on the RESTful APIs and events. Second phase was about making sure that we could then take this setup and push it one step further where we moved also update functionality and the functionality itself out of mainframe to cloud. And this was for the portfolios where we had chosen to modernize and write the applications ourselves as opposed to buying a third-party solution. We also had approaches where we bought SaaS solutions to modernize. So basically what this phase gave us the ability to do is for all newer integrations, we had APIs and events available both for read and updates, thereby giving us a solid chance to decouple all the legacy integrations that we had on mainframe. Completing phase two was very critical and a cornerstone of our strategy, because until we could do this, we would simply not be able to switch the master and shut down the master on mainframe, because we still had a lot of consumers on it. And considering we were a core banking portfolio, that would pretty much be the entire bank. So phase two again was all about making sure that we had the right data models on the cloud, and then we had APIs and events which could service that part. And phase three was to completely decouple any legacy dependencies on our portfolio and make sure that all read and write operations simply happen on cloud. Of course, we have for a significant part of our portfolio completed phase one and phase two. We are right now implementing phase three for many of the subdomains that we have. So that's a little bit what stage we are in at this moment based on this approach. There are a couple of other things that I would like to share with you, which are learnings out of, practically how did we pull this off. The APIs that we developed on cloud, which were progressively able to look at read data and update of data, had to handle coexistence. So this is our view of representing what coexistence means technically. So anything below the red line is a set of data and mainframe and legacy services that had to remain functionally and data-wise consistent. So no matter where the trigger point was for consuming these services, it could have been through a RESTful API or the legacy interfaces that we had. The functionality and the data behaved the same way. So anything you see above the red line is all about the different interfaces that we historically supported, the ones that you can see in gray boxes about legacy file interfaces, messaging services, etc. And also through the RESTful APIs and the events that we had. So this design decoupling was essential to make sure that we continue to provide consistent and reliable data integrity and functional integrity when we were moving through phase one, phase two, and phase three. So this was one of the things that we implemented. And then coming back to the RESTful APIs and the events itself during the coexistence phase, it was very important for us to make sure that there were a certain set of standards that were implemented and followed on various aspects of how the APIs were designed and how they were used. Of course, it started with the fact that whatever we did with identifying APIs, that was anchored with domain-driven design as an approach, and the APIs followed the standard RESTful principles. And then we also had a developer portal where developers could consume the APIs through self-service. This was hugely important for us because this was our trigger point for making sure that we exposed the accumulated domain knowledge on the core banking portfolio through self-service. And then as far as the production and consumption of APIs were concerned, we had a lot of work put in to make sure that the API payloads had backward compatibility. The security mechanisms applied on API on cloud was consistent with the security mechanisms and authorizations that we applied on mainframe. And then we also made sure that some of the 12-factor cloud principles, especially about maintaining standard CI/CD pipelines, looking at the cloud portfolio from a DevOps point of view, was also put in. Consistent error handling was also important for us, again, due to coexistence, because it's one thing about the APIs being able to handle error, but then it had to have some correlations to how the portfolio still existed on the mainframe. Anything that we delivered on cloud or by default came out with test automation. This was again our ticket to reduce the dependency on key person knowledge, thereby progressively having all regression tests automated. And then again, considering core banking supports all business processes in the bank, including the newer ones with open banking and PSD2, API and microservices observability, tech stack and tool stack, which we had on our cloud platform, was also key for us from day one. So this is a little bit the qualitative measures that we took to make sure that the APIs and the cloud portfolio that we delivered was reliable and was standard. So in the end, and this is my last slide, the summary of learnings look a little bit like this. Understanding drivers for modernization is key to expectation management to make sure that when we can deliver what and what does the modernization done state look like from an API and cloud perspective. APIs are definitely key in terms of introducing newer and standard ways of consumption of data and functionality, but it is also important to clean up the technical debt at the back end. Otherwise, we end up leaving our organizations with a dual portfolio with a much higher level of complexity than what we started with. While production of APIs in a standard way is very important and crucial, having a clear API adoption strategy with consumers, either internal or out external, was also very key for us. Otherwise, it didn't help much if we just had a bunch of APIs which nobody wanted to consume or nobody had an incentive to consume. And then again, as I said in the second bullet point, having a clear decommissioning strategy for all the legacy integrations is important for us to actually shut down and gain the efficiency benefits on total cost of ownership for the portfolios that we deliver. And then making sure that we focus holistically on people's competence, not only from a tech perspective, but also business and functional knowledge perspective was key for us to make sure that we brought people along in this journey. And then, as I said in the end, delivering business value through APIs progressively was key to make sure that the investments for modernization were sustainable and it also materially affected what business and our customers wanted. So that in brief is something that I thought would be interesting to share here in this forum. So that actually concludes my part of the slides that I had prepared. I'd of course be more than happy to take any comments, questions, or inputs if there are any.
Hey, Sudhindra. Yes, yes, there are some questions. So, one of them is, has Danske Bank got into the embedded finance journey? I mean, have you entered some partnership? That's one. So, just connecting to your talk, then. So, how easy is it for you now that you have done this transformation, this API journey? How easy is it for you to move to that? Take that embedded finance path?
Uh, Great. So, of course, as a bank, as far as business strategies are concerned, we are always on the lookout for what benefits and what makes sense towards our customers and shareholders. But as far as how easy is it now, relatively as compared to when we started the API journey, it's a lot more easier. And the ease comes with the fact that all the internal data and functionality are now consumable and understandable through standard API interfaces. So there is that much lesser lead time for people to be able to figure out what are the options available on how we can effectively use the data and functionality we have. The second part is with the API and the domain-driven design vocabulary, we are able to have far more fruitful conversations, either with our own internal business or the TPPs that we might want to talk with, because there is a lot clearer understanding of what our own data can do, what our own functionality can do, and thereby identify opportunities. So it has significantly become easier for us to have those conversations and enter into any of those partnerships right now.
Okay. So Another area in the API life cycle, which is gaining prominence, which is often talked about, is the API security. We had a couple of sessions yesterday and one more lined up for later today. So, how did you go about that API security thing?
Sure. It's always a tricky topic. There are several perspectives I would take as far as security is concerned. One is how does the API behave in the internal ecosystem and the APIs that are exposed to the external ecosystem, right? So those are two broad categories of APIs I would call out. The ones that are relevant for open banking and PSD2 follows a set of guidelines from the industry standards itself, both on application and data security and authorization and authentication, etc. So those are some of the things we definitely followed. As far as the internal ecosystem API security is concerned, as I pointed out, maintaining consistency of authorization and authentication between the cloud applications and coexisting legacy applications were important. So we use an internal common application framework for security involving also ADFS and the likes to make sure that the APIs are able to we are able to consistently authenticate and authorize them. Along with that comes our ability to host the APIs on standard API gateways, which gives us a lot of features in terms of interacting and integrating with our own security mechanisms that we have. And then there is a standard set of application logging frameworks that we use to make sure that we are able to keep an eye on it. In addition to this, of course, there are the infrastructure and network security principles and policies that are applied as and when we talk about API consumption, but they are applied centrally through the services that we provision internally. So that's a little bit how we walked around with API
Oh,
security.
sure, sure. A little comprehensive answer. Yeah. So the last question. What is your API monetization approach? What have you done? How have you been on?
Okay,
What is the experience?
this is something that I get quite a bit. I look at monetization again in two flavors, internal and external, because there is a lot of business investment and outcomes that we have promised internally in the bank as to why different application areas should consume APIs. So the monetization there is simply tracked in a few angles to make sure that progressively newer business applications that we launch is that much more simpler and that much more decoupled. So not
Mm.
every aspect of the bank and every department of the bank have to drag along. So we constantly track consumption internally, and we also constantly track how much did we save over the last few years so as to not make changes to proprietary interfaces. As far as external monetization is concerned, that comes through, of course, some of the business strategies that we have, not least spanning the partnerships that we interact with TPPs and the business large business customers that we have. Again, that would be a little bit out of scope for me to share here in terms of the external monetization, but our ability to track consumption and track exit out of legacy interfaces is our internal key for incentivizing API consumption.
Okay. Okay. So you have an internal no a developer portal where the
Absolutely.
internal teams can come. Okay. Great.
At any point in time, we are able to see the volume of new integrations, the volume of events consumed, and also the progressive decline of how many transactions we have to process on mainframe. So all of that has been put in place to make sure that we keep an eye on the financial benefits that we have promised.
And the governance and process are in place to ensure that no duplication of APIs happens
Yes,
between
yes,
the teams, right?
yes, and most of that is, of course, as wherever it is automated or it can be automated, it has been automated. We also have internal APIs for quality checking the APIs that we deliver. So APIs over a period of time don't become a new set of problematic services that we have. So all the hygiene factors of how API should be maintained from a life cycle perspective, they are internally available and automated to a great degree.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks a lot.
Of course.
That was great talking to you and great no listening to you.
Th- Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Prashant, for having me here, and excited to follow the rest of this talk and have a good session the rest of the day.
Thank you.
All right.